Thank you, Ammar, for being over here. Truly appreciate it. Now, to begin with, I know we're here to talk about Take Me to Dubai, your adventure about your being a taxi driver. But before we go to that, for the audience, who are you? What's your humble beginning? Obviously you came into this world, but tell us a little about yourself.
Okay.
Welcome to Me TalkX. We expose, explore, and express what lies beneath the surface, guided by purpose, people, planet, and prosperity. Real voices, no performance, speak without illusion. This is Me TalkX.
So, Ammar Shams, I'm 61 this year. Born in Dubai, grew up in Dubai, went to school locally until I was 16, went off to the UK, did my first degree in economics, came back, very regular life of employment, development, settling down, getting married, all that sort of good stuff. And in 2003, decided to evaluate and reposition what I wanted to do and what I wanted to get out of life. And I went on a never-ending adventure since 22 years of the absence of a plan almost.
Okay.
And I followed probably three paths. One hat was academic.
Okay.
So I went back to school when I was 41 to do a master's in comparative law. And then I went back yet again when I was 54 to do a PhD in the intersectionality of gender and religious law. And that's one hat. The other hat was the professional one, where I would only ever do a job that I thought added value, where I was learning, where it was fun. And the minute it was repetitive, I moved on to another role.
Okay.
So I changed roles quite often. And the third is the adventure route, which is wanting to do things that were outside of both my comfort zone, anybody else's comfort zone, and have experiences that would hopefully help me redefine myself and help me better understand my life, the lives of others, and so on. So that would include small adventures, like, for example, deciding to drive from Dubai to London.
You've done that?
I did that.
Wow.
So in 2010, I was assigned to a role in London to work there for just under a year. And rather than fly out, I decided, well, why not see what the drive looks like? So I spent 2 weeks trying to get there. And that was one of several adventures that were off the beaten path.
Okay.
But probably the most significant one was the decision in 2023 to want to experience driving a taxi in Dubai, learning more about Dubai, learning more about others, learning more about myself, and in the process, perhaps writing a book about the experience and sharing with a wider audience my Dubai, that is 60 years old, with their Dubai, that's a 2025 version or 2024 version, and how our perspectives of the same city could be either similar or different.
Okay. So I'm greatly honored that you gave me the book to read.
Yes.
I went through it, found some very interesting things in there. Before I go into this, and which is around mainly around your whole trip, whole experience of the being a taxi driver, you said something about not having a plan. When everyone talks about having a plan, and I myself find it very difficult to have a plan. What makes, and looking at your career, looking at the adventures you've had, why not have a plan?
Within plans, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, is they're very constraining. And one cannot be in complete control of one's destiny at the best of times. When you do create a plan and you do have targets, I've always seen, with when I've observed others, and even myself originally, is you will move the parameter, you'll move the parameters with time, and you will live a life that is effectively designed either by society or by others rather than yourself. You're never in touch with what works for you. You borrow what other people tell you is the ideal life. The ideal life invariably measured materially, or through positions and roles. There's a correlation with power. Whereas I would like to believe, and you know, there's been enough studies done about it, that the parameter that ought to be used whenever gauging or monitoring everything ought to be happiness. So the biggest challenge is to understand what truly makes you happy. Money is at the end of the day a mechanism of that you exchange money for goods and services. It's the goods and services that give pleasure, the dopamine effect, or whatever it might be. So what one needs to understand what makes them happy. I've found that it took me a very long time to understand what makes me happy, and not what makes other people happy, or what other people think would make me happy. And I found out that what makes me happy is not being constrained and restricted and not being bored. So even the most powerful, the most significant job in the world is a repetitive job. You just revisit the same issues over and over and over again, year in, year out. And you'll find that you have sort of, instead of having 30 years of experience, you have 5 years of experience repeated 6 times over and over and over again. I didn't want that. So I jumped off whatever bandwagon I had been on, and have had an adventure since.
So, I mean, you've been blessed to have that direction of not having a plan. There are people who will not, who are not fully blessed.
No, I'm always completely conscious of and aware of the fact that mine is a position of privilege, and that privilege is a combination. I was born in the right place at the right time with the right opportunities. So this works for me. For a lot of others, I'm sure it won't. But I actually think it works for many more people than believe this is an option for them. Everyone that I know that has had a similar background, let's say, regardless of where they've come from in the world, this was an option for them. They've chosen not to take it. They've chosen not to take it because they're constantly striving for more of what they have. You have one car, I want more than one car, or I want a better one. I travel twice a year, I want to travel 6 times a year. I want to go instead of economy, business or first, a private jet. So it's more of the same. If you have the basis. I remember once being stopped by one of these people in the mall that selling properties. And she insisted that, please, this is an investment opportunity. And for whatever reason, I chose to engage with her. And I said, actually, thanks, but it's okay. I have enough. And that triggered this. It was actually for me, it was very useful to go through the conversation with her. Because she said, no, you can't have enough. I said, no, I do. For all of my needs, I have enough. I have enough to give me a basic lifestyle that meets all of my needs. She said, but you can have more. I said, yes, but to get more, I need to do something that I don't want to do. I've satisfied myself with where I am. And then she came with the ultimate sort of arm twisting guilt trip. I say, do you have kids? And I said, yes, I have a daughter. Said, you should get a property for her. I said, no. I've given her all that she needs. She needs a good education. She needs, I've made sure she has a shelter. She has a roof over her head. She'll inherit my home, more than enough for anybody in this life. I said, that's it. She needs to live her life. I don't want to live her life for her. And I don't want to dictate what that life ought to be. And people get caught in this trap of, and I'm not sure whether it's self-imposed, societally imposed, but they use that as an excuse to constantly do the same or more of the same because we're accumulating wealth for ourselves and for others, for our family, for our kids, for our grandkids, for the next door neighbor's kids, for the cat, whatever it might be. It's never ending. And, you know, I've only got another, based on I think life expectancy in the UAE, I've got another 17 years to go, right? That's all I've got. I want to use it to live my life on my terms with my objectives, not anybody else's. Yes, I appreciate it comes from a position of privilege, and I am eternally, daily in gratitude for that privilege. But it's not unique to me. It's not unique to Emiratis. It's not unique to people from the Gulf. It's there for almost everybody from the OECD that is not in poverty. Those that are in poverty, I truly feel for. But when we're talking about this as an option for others, it's an option for, in my opinion, millions of people that choose not to go down this route.
This is another interview we'll do, you know, because it's a lot of discussions which can be had and find a path from it. Let's focus back into this because I mean
this can go on forever.
This can go forever. So there's something which I read when I was reading the book, and your sister challenged this spark. She's saying doing something for the first time.
Yes.
Has this been a trigger for you since she said that? And is this one of those things which made you go and drive the taxi?
Yes. So in terms of epiphanous moments, you know, whether it's that apple falling on Newton's head or who was it, Archimedes that jumped out of the bath saying, Eureka. One day, 2003, my sister just read something in a book and she said, so when was the last time you did something for the first time? And it was a great quote, but it actually triggered my thinking. And I thought, oh my God, my life is a repetitive cycle. I'm not doing much for the first time. I'm not having new experiences. And not only did it trigger me to quit my job at the time and start a life of adventure, but it has been the basis of every decision I make or every choice I make. She embroidered it on a, I've got an embroidered piece of cloth with that quote. When was the last time we did something for the first time? Framed in my home. Because I've told my sister that her question has formed the basis of my life philosophy since. And I think it's been healthy.
Yes.
And it's given me, if not a direction, because it's not a direction, it's a question. It's given me a basis, prism through which I make decisions.
So obviously massive impact your sister's had on you, and from the adventures you've briefly mentioned, it's come from there. Now you went down this route of becoming a taxi driver. We are in the UAE, you are an Emirati, you are well educated, and like you've said, you're blessed, you have certain privileges, and still you went down that line. Just getting down to get that approval of you being a taxi driver. I'm sure certain officials were involved in it. How easy was it?
Okay, so the first thought I had was, I want to do this off the radar. I want to do it incognito without involving anybody.
Yeah.
So actually, the first thought also was, I like my car, so I wanted to do it driving my own car.
Yeah.
And I reached out to Uber
Yep.
initially. LinkedIn, I found sort of the head honcho of Uber in the Middle East, wrote to him, connected, wrote him a note and said, this is what I want to do. Can I come and drive an Uber? I talked to his team. I also did the same with Kareem. I talked to their team as well. And they basically said no, because we can't do the way it's set up in Dubai. You cannot be an independent Uber driver using your own car. You have to do it through a limousine company. You need to have a separate license that is RTA issued and so on. So Uber and Kareem aren't an option. This is what's wonderful about being from the Emirates, from Dubai. We are a very, very small community, and one way or the other, we're only ever 1 degree of separation away from anybody else. And in this case, it wasn't even 1 degree of separation. I reached out to RTA, the CEO of licensing. Has been a childhood friend of mine. I've known him since we were both kids. And I reached out to him and said, listen, this is something I want to do. Can you facilitate it? He laughed his head off and said, only you would want to do this, but let me see what I can do. And he said, okay, so we as RTA don't have any taxis ourselves. We license companies that have taxis. One of the franchises is Dubai Taxi Corporation. We know them well. I'll reach out to them, see if they'll do you a favor. He did, and there's this wonderful community sense amongst Emiratis, and I love this about our country. I think there's a almost endemic sort of mindset that says, let's support each other to do something, whatever it is. If somebody wants to do something, and that something has a net value that's above zero, let's support each other. So DTC said, yeah, fine, come in. We'll entertain, because A, we want to do that guy a favor. B, you're an Emirati, we'll support you.
Yep.
And then they said, and the but is, we're not going to do you any favors. You will have to do this the same way we do every taxi driver in the Emirates. You will have to be tested, you'll have to do the course, and you'll have to work the shifts. And I was fine, whatever it takes, I'll do it. And it started off with, go down to HR and have an interview. Fine. Went down, the interviewer was looking at my CV, just shaking his head and saying, fine. And then they said, and now you need to go and do, and they apologized, and we're really sorry, but the process requires you to do an English test. So can you please go do an English test? Fine, I did that. And then there was a 2-week training course in Warsan. Myself and 35, we were a total of 35. So myself and 34 other potential taxi drivers who wanted to do the course in Arabic. The course was being conducted either in English or in Arabic. The English one had plethora of nationalities, Ghanaians, Nigerians, Indians, Pakistanis, whatever. They were all doing it in English. Myself, Egyptians, Algerians were doing it in Arabic. We did that course for 2 weeks, tests all the way through. And then, of course, you finally pass and you do the job. And then, of course, you do the shifts, which was also challenging. Well, yeah, so that was how I started, and I went down the route. No quarter asked, no quarter given. I did the course as every other cab driver did in Dubai.
That's very good. I mean, like we spoke about privileges, being blessed, but yet the connection got you there, but you still had to go through the process. That's just amazing.
One of the things I remember in the course, in the training course, of course, we get a lot of breaks. We had this one break and we sit and we chat. And for me, those chats were informative.
Yeah.
I'm listening to their stories, their backgrounds, their challenges, and so on. And this one conversation, they were talking about an incident that had happened with a current taxi driver. So we're all, taxi drivers, prospective taxi drivers. They were talking about somebody they knew that was an actual cab driver, had gotten into an accident with an Emirati who was properly dressed in his kandura and so on. And the Emirati apologized that it had been his fault, waited for the police. When the police came, they took the taxi driver's license and the Emirati's license, and the policeman apparently suddenly stopped and saluted the Emirati. And the taxi driver asked him, says, "Who are you?" And the Emirati said, "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is who's right and who's wrong. I'm wrong. Let's just get this over with." He never found out who it was, but obviously somebody that warranted a salute from the policeman, and they all shared collectively as a conversation what they think to them, from their understanding, what allowed Dubai to succeed was Emiratis will have a privileged position, but they are the first people that would insist that the law is applied to everybody equally. And you don't ask, no quarter given, no quarter asked. So yes, I felt I was privileged that I had friends that would allow me to get on the course, but once there, I was not given any exception. I was going to be treated the same as everyone else.
It's interesting. I'm doing a project with Abu Dhabi, and one of the things, this is on service excellence, and it is based on the values of the Emiratis. And one of the things which we came up, and this was with the culture team, we did this. And one of the strongest things which came out deep-rooted in the Emirati culture is integrity and tolerance. And this seems to be coming out with your experience through this whole thing.
It was, for me, it was the eye-opener during the entire experience of driving was perception. So for me, what I learned, initially for me, I wanted this to be a learning experience for me, interaction with people that I would not normally interact with, and without the filter. But one of the side effects that I thoroughly enjoyed was understanding this perception of Emiratis. Everybody seems to have a very strong opinion about what we're like, who we are, what we're willing to do, what our whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's very strong. People have a committed opinion, even though a lot of them don't know much about us, or haven't experienced, don't have Emirati friends, haven't been into our homes, haven't interacted with us. And I was surprised. I always knew that people had very strong opinions about what they thought Emiratis were and what we're like. But I didn't appreciate how potentially ill-informed it could be.
Yes.
And I found out some of it positively ill-informed, some of it negatively ill-informed, but ill-informed nonetheless. And this concept of you cannot be Emirati. And I was like, why can't I be Emirati?
Because you were very transparent
Absolutely.
about this. I'm Emirati, that's it.
From the get-go, I had always, I thought this through before I started. What did I want to project as a persona? Because a lot of people would say, oh, it'd be fantastic if no one knew you were Emirati. Pretend to be somebody else. Put on an accent. And I thought that would, for me, I thought that if I ever took on a persona, it would be disrespectful to that persona. If I wanted to sound like anybody else, it would be a caricature of somebody. And caricatures to me are offensive. So therefore I didn't want to put on it. And I wanted to be myself. I wouldn't volunteer it, but if I was asked, I would tell people who I was. I would tell people my background if necessary. My reflex was ideally to say little or nothing because I wanted to listen. Unfortunately, my tone, my accent sometimes would betray me, and the first reaction someone would say if I said anything beyond where, would be, wait a minute, where are you from?
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, I'm from here. More often than not, it would be, no, that you can't be from here, or where are you really from, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
People would not necessarily accept it. Tourists never flinched. If a tourist would ask, where are you from? And I'd say, from here, never bat an eyelid, because everywhere in the world, indigenous people drive cabs.
Yes.
So tourists would never think it unnatural. People who lived here thought it strange. But it's, at the end of the day, it's just a function of economics. Emiratis may not necessarily be naturally attracted to driving a cab because it doesn't pay as much as you could get doing another job. It's literally labor market dynamics. If taxi drivers in Dubai earned as much as taxi drivers in London, I think quite a lot of us would drive taxis. It's a lucrative. If it's lucrative, you do it. The reason we don't do it is because it's not lucrative. Of the passengers that I had, probably, if you were to look at the only nationality that did not flinch was other Emiratis. I had 3 Emirati passengers, so it's not really a sufficient number to draw a empirical evidence from. But all 3 of them they didn't bat an eyelid. They just turned around and said, so what's it like? One of them said, does it pay well? And I actually asked the guy that said, does it pay well? I said, would you do it? He said, if it paid well, yes. And so, yeah, while a lot of people discounted the possibility, the Emiratis didn't discount the possibility, because we know what we are capable of or would be willing to do. It's not that we don't drive taxis because we wouldn't. We don't drive taxis because we can get jobs that pay better. Everyone would do the same, regardless. So it's just one more filter through which people see us.
So you drove your taxi, you stayed back in your home.
Yes.
So the taxi driving was the immersive experience, but the rest of the life was your normal.
I still needed to, when people say, no, if you really wanted to do it, you should have stayed in the camp with the other drivers. Yes, I didn't want that immersive an experience. I still wanted to see my wife every day. I wanted to have lunch with my mother every day. I had other commitments that are a part of my life.
Yes.
You know, I sit on boards. I had to go to board meetings, not in my uniform, but I had to go to board meetings. I had to attend weddings or go to funerals. I was still a member of the community. So one of the differences between myself and other cab drivers are invariably here on their own. Very few of them have their families here. So their entire lives revolve around their jobs. I have my nuclear family. I have my extended family. I have my friends. I have my professional responsibilities. I could not detach from them all. So I would literally go to see some of my friends in uniform. Halfway through my shift, I would have a function I would have to attend. And with those friends that I knew knew about it and wouldn't have an issue with it, I would turn up in uniform. It was never an issue. But I couldn't do it immersively. Sadly, I think I would have liked to, but I couldn't. I was still very much, especially the family. Every day, I did the evening shift, so I 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. every day. So, and while the shift is 12 hours, you're not allowed to drive more than 10. You're obliged to take 2 hours off. The entire sort of management system where you swipe your card to start the shift in the car, it triggers a 12-hour time period. And if the meter is running for 10 hours, the meter immediately then disconnects and says, you have to take a 2-hour break. You're obliged to not work for 2 of the 12. You could do it at the beginning of your shift, halfway through, split up over 4 half hours. It's up to you. whatever rocks your boat. In my case, I would take a dinner break and go and spend time with my wife every evening and it was bad for the experience because it was a significant part of the shift. I wanted, 8 to 10 p.m. was useful in terms of traffic flow, but I wanted to spend time at home as well. So I would go home every night, have dinner with my wife, come home at 4 a.m., sleep, wake up, drive straight to my mother's house, have lunch with my mother and siblings, drive home in time to get into my uniform and start my shift. So it was the only mechanism that would allow me to meet all of my familial, social, and experiential obligations at the same time.
I was reading in the book when you earned your first
My first fare.
yeah. How did it feel? How much was it? And what were you like? Were you like, wow? Or were you like, oh my God, what happened?
I found a lot of the experiences on a human level, the joy of the fulfillment and joy of accomplishment is regardless of the task. So, I like you said, I've academically, I have completed all of the achievements I could. Professionally, I've worked at C-suite, I've advised ministers, chairman of boards, all that sort of good stuff. And yet, getting everything to work for my first fare, getting the passenger, knowing how to start the meter, knowing how to end the meter, knowing how to use the machine to take my fare. When they got out of my cab, it's like, yes, done. And they didn't recognize that this was, my first experience. It was fulfilling, and it was in a way it was cute in my head, thinking, wow, any achievement, no matter how small, is uplifting. Passing the exams during the training period, every exam, I would still, the English exam, I would have assumed I was going to pass without, and yet the trepidation, accomplishment, an uplift when you've passed. It's the same no matter what you ever do in your life. Yeah, I don't care who you are, what your background is. When you're given a task and you pass, when you succeed, there is this dopamine effect. And you can't help it. You can't resist it. You can't stop it. It's still going to be there. So my first fare, it was so, and the same one, the first time I did an Uber ride.
Okay.
Yeah, because I also, in that time frame, I went back to the company and said, please, for my own reasons, for the purposes of my social experiment, can I also drive an Uber? Because if I were to do this properly, I would have had to have driven a regular taxi for probably a couple of years before I can be elevated to drive a limousine taxi. Yeah. So I asked, and God bless them, DTC, they said, fine. And they gave me a Tesla to drive for a week. Wore a suit. It was fantastic. Life was great. But also it's a different world. There is no meter. There is no credit card. This is all going to be done electronically using apps. And it worked very differently. But the first Uber ride was, again, that uplifting sensation of, I've done something for the first time. And I did it well. It was strangely uplifting.
There's something which you say is that you call the taxi the greatest leveler.
Yes.
What exactly do you mean by that?
I can't think of any strata or any nationality, any strata of society or any nationality or any income bracket that did not get in my cab. everyone uses a cab. Whether I had businessmen, lawyers, C-suite executives, housemates, laborers, workers, professionals, every possible member of society got in the cab. And they all sat in the same back seat, and the mechanism that all worked the same. And some will happily engage with the cab driver, some will not engage at all. And with some, I had eye-opening conversations when I learned so much from so many of my passengers. And I think even now, I would go back and do it again just for the conversations.
So what would you talk about? What would you ask them when you were having these conversations?
Sometimes, okay, so anywhere in the world, every part of the world has a conversation fuse, something that will kick off a conversation. And I mean, when I lived in the UK, so I lived in totality, I think I lived in the UK for about 10 years. The other 50 were here, but 10 were there, studying invariably. But when I was there, the minute you meet a total stranger, the weather is how you start a conversation. Immediately. Great weather we've been having, awful weather we've been having, whatever.
Yep.
In the States, when you visit, people will always talk about whatever sports was happening. In New York, so did you see the Knicks last week or whatever. In the UAE, the conversation trigger is invariably, so where are you from? And for me, I've always understood and I've always believed that you're only ever, once again, I said, in the UAE, you're only ever 1 degree of separation away from a fellow Emirati. I think with anybody in the world, you're only ever 2 steps away from them. So the minute someone would get in, all I would have to do is say, so where are you from? And the minute they say where they're from, I can almost immediately draw a line to where they're from. So if you were to say you were from the UK, I would say whereabouts, which would get you curious. Yes. Why would it matter? And you'd say, let's say, where would you say you're from?
I'm from London.
Okay. Oh, which part of London? Because I know London intimately and intricately. And then that would trigger a conversation.
Yeah, okay.
And that, if the ride was a half-hour ride, it's amazing how much conversation you can have in half an hour with a total stranger. With some, it would be superficial, but with some, it would be a lot more personal and a lot deeper. That caught me off guard.
Okay.
The comfort people had, something I was not expecting, to let their guard down with a total stranger. I think there is this, and my only explanation for it is there is this liberating belief that this person I'll never cross paths with this person ever again. And they're willing to let the floodgates open and have a very free-flowing conversation with a total stranger. Because it's a relief for them. And they would share intimate details of their lives. Sometimes you would want to tell your passengers, I'm here, guys. I'm in the cab with you. Please remember that. Because they would have, amongst themselves, if you ever had more than one passenger, they'd start off having a conversation on their own. And you'd almost want to tell them, guys, please, there's a stranger in the cab with you. Can you...
Who's driving?
Who's driving? 3 women picked up 3 women leaving DIFC going to Bar de Port, and them sharing their relationship challenges with each other. hilariously. And bless them, I think they thought they could have this conversation because they were having most of it in Arabic. But all they had to do was look at my picture on the screen with the taxi fare to realize I was an Arab. They had to see my name. They would see I was an Arab. And yet they did it. They got in the back and they immediately started talking to each other about relationship issues and about men. And I was just trying, combination of bursting out laughing, wanting to hear the conversation, and for their own dignity, I wanted to tell them, guys, I'm an Arab man sitting here. But anyway, so that and then when that conversation, it was the end of that drive was hilarious because I actually turned around and said to them in Arabic, on behalf of my gender, I apologize. Ooh. The looks on their faces was worth $1 million. They shut the door. Where are you from? I said, I'm from here. You can't be. I said, my mother says I am. I'm sorry, I am. And then they wanted to know what was going on, looking for cameras everywhere. So I explained that it was, me wanting to do this, and that actually in my other life I teach and so on. And they said, so what are you doing this for? I said, I might write a book at the end of it. Will we be in your book? And I was, you'll probably be a whole chapter in my book based on that conversation. They burst out laughing and left. But yeah, people see you and don't see you in equal measure. You can be invisible. And this is something that I remember Muhammad Ali, the boxer, commenting about how he would judge and evaluate people based on how they talk to the great unwashed, how they would treat those that are there that are invisible, whether they are your cab drivers, your waiters, your petrol pump attendants, your delivery guy. How do they interact with them? Do they look them in the eye? Are they respectful? Do you recognize that is a fully grown adult human being who has responsibilities, who has a life, who has a family, who has an outlook on life? I met some phenomenal human beings that were driving taxis with me. Some that shamed me by their dignity, their experiences. Some who are still friends of mine that I still am in contact with. And yet, for a lot of people, they don't see them. They're driving the cab, but they don't see them. And that's a reflection on people. Like I said, I met every type of human being in those 2 months. But by and large, my experience of people was a positive one, a very positive one, actually. By and large, people were very respectful. By and large, they interacted. By and large, they were curious. So I would say if I were to judge the overall experience, overall people out there, very positive.
Beautiful.
Much more positive than I would probably have expected it to have been before the experiment.
You call this whole thing Take Me to Dubai.
Yes. And
you say there was a Dubai you knew, and now there's a Dubai you now know. What is it?
So I like everyone, I live in my bubble.
Yeah.
Right? And my bubble is my Dubai. My Dubai is the Dubai I grew up in. I mean, in childhood, I lived in a certain neighborhood in Deira. Everyone moved out of that neighborhood. There's probably just one Emirati family left in it now. But we moved to Jumeirah in 1974. And my life revolves around Jumeirah, where my family still live, Bersha, where I live, and I mix with my friends, who also invariably live in sort of very limited locations. And to me, that's Dubai. It's from city center and the creek on the Dera side through to Jumeirah, maybe up to the marina. People would get in my cab and would ask me to go places that I had no idea where that was. I didn't even, because during the course you're supposed to know locations in Dubai, and you pass an exam that says you know Dubai generally. But people would get in and be very much more specific. And they would name neighborhoods that were alien to me. I did not know where these places were. God bless Google Maps for all it does for humanity, because I would enter the location and see places for the first time ever. And these were full-fledged communities with trees and roads and roundabouts and neighborhoods that I had never known existed. And I have a new appreciation for all of Dubai, because Dubai is a lot bigger than I thought it was. One gentleman asked me to take him to, I can't remember the name of the location now, but it's basically the residential area for the people that had built Expo, the workers. The equivalent of Al Goz, the Goz residential area for the workers, but closer to the Dubai airport and Expo, the Al Maktoum airport and Expo.
Yeah.
And I took him there, and there was buildings upon buildings upon buildings, thousands upon thousands of people. I always thought this was desert. It had been desert until 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And all of this had been built. I was oblivious to its existence. And chances are I may never go there again. But at least now I know it's there. And it's an appreciation for how much one doesn't know. Not just about geography and people, but generally, as I went down my academic journey, the one thing I continuously to develop is the sense of understanding how little I know. And the more I spend, it's a cliche, but my God, it's true. You become more and more humble, because not because you add knowledge, but because you appreciate how little knowledge you have. And it really tickles me to see people who believe they know or understand anything. People that you see, whether who espouse an understanding of life, an understanding of science, an understanding of knowledge. Anyone who professes an understanding of knowledge, by definition, is showing how little they know, because there is so much we don't know. It's scary how little one knows about everything.
Wow. Being in the role you did as a taxi, reality check. Easy, difficult, anyone can do it.
Anyone can do the job. I remember my father, God rest his soul, once telling me that he was comfortable in the knowledge that I would always survive, because in his estimation, and this is more than a decade before I did this, actually more than 2 decades before I did this, he turned around and said, I know you'll always survive, because worst comes to worst, you'll drive a cab wherever you go in the world. And he said it in a very positive way, because he said, you are willing to do it. You wouldn't not be prepared to do that, was his understanding. And I'd find my way around. This is pre-Google as well. So you learn ways and so on and so on. To him, this was something that you can always do to survive. If you were to, if you were a refugee tomorrow and I decided to, emigrate to Buenos Aires, with today's technology, I could be a cab driver in Buenos Aires, I could be a cab driver in Shanghai, as long as I could understand the word for where I need to go.
Yeah.
That's it. Technology is there. It's a job that can sustain you anywhere in the world. And from that respect, it's easy. Back in the day in London, you had to have the knowledge,
Yes.
which nobody would be able to pass because of how difficult it is. Yeah. Today, I'm sorry, but you don't even need a cab driver. The car itself can take you anywhere you need to go, anywhere in the world. So yeah, I could do it anywhere in the world. Would I do it here again? It's difficult because of the amount of hours you need to do to earn enough to sustain yourself. From my colleagues who did this for a living, they needed to work tremendous amount of hours to achieve, because the income is revenue related.
Yes.
You needed to work a lot of hours to earn the sort of money you set yourself as a target. It's tiring, it's exhausting. 12 hours, even if you're offered 10 hours sitting down. And it's a stressful job because you're on the road with millions of other people who all want to go somewhere. And road rage is a phenomenon. And rightly or wrong, everyone dislikes taxi drivers, even though they're the only ones out there and truck drivers and so on, for whom driving is their job. They're actually no one wants to be on the road. They're there because that is what their job is. So it's exhausting. It's stressful. One of the things they do during the 2-week training course is, there's an element of the course that teaches us about physical and mental well-being. They actually help you understand and appreciate how difficult that job is on your body. So things like, when you get in a queue, you're obliged to wait your turn, get out of the cab and walk. Walk around your cab over and over again, take short walks, but stand upright as often as you can. Drink 2 liters of water during your shift because your kidneys need it. That sort of, de-stressing when you're in your rest period, if you can, take a power nap. All of the exercises we were taught to help us deal with the physical, emotional, mental stress of being a cab driver, which is the same stress of being a cab driver anywhere in the world. I can imagine it is physically, mentally, and emotionally difficult to be a cab driver. But it's something that anyone can do as long as they know how to drive. But they need the temperament.
We're going to come to the close of this. And before we close this off, your daughter, your wife, you talk about your parents as well. How did the family feel about it? And I know, your father is no longer in the world. If your father was alive, what would he have said? And I just want to understand.
He would have laughed his head off to start off with. But no. So pre-oil, back in the day when this part of the world was a very difficult place to survive in. One of my grandfathers was very privileged because he drove a taxi. So that was very white collar for his day. So my mother's father, and therefore for my mother, it was like, my son's following in the footsteps of my dad. And he was the only one of my 4 grandparents who was literate. He could read and write. So this was an elevated role in society because he drove a cab. So definitely there was no element of you can't do that or there's shame attached to it. None of that. In my family, none of that. There was encouragement from my wife and my mother and my siblings, all of them, because it was, you know what, this is going to be a hell of an experience. It was exciting, it was interesting, it was curious. We're blessed, I guess, as a family because none of us feel the need to prove ourselves to anybody. Alhamdulillah, we have done what we needed to have done in our lives. We've worked, we've achieved, and therefore there is no need to push a public image that was false. We don't need to. Driving the cab, there's, once again, like I said, there's no shame attached to it. It's an amazing experience. My wife, but I think everyone should be blessed with having a partner and family like I have been blessed with, because they support, to them, their default reaction is, hey, you're going to be happy. That's the only thing that matters. If you're going to be happy, do it. We're there for you, support you. You've never let us down. You've never brought shame on any of us. On the contrary, you have achieved. Therefore, do it. Go for it. And every day they couldn't wait for me to come home for dinner in terms of my wife, or lunch in terms of my siblings and my mother, because they want to hear the stories. So what was today like? Who did you get? How was it? Because every day was an adventure. It was different. Prior to that, every day was similar. When I was stuck in that horrible, what's that wonderful? There's a wonderful adage that says, in the rat race, to win, you have to first and foremost be a rat. I'd rather not be the rat. So it came out of that race. So every day was exciting for all of them. They were very supportive, very curious, and bless them. They, even now, they still see it as a positive. So alhamdulillah, I was blessed with having them as my family, and I wish a similar family on everybody.
Beautiful. You and I have come from a generation where we did not have mobiles.
Yes.
I remember just playing on the street, or it was very different. This thing of a device in your hand, taking it everywhere, or you meeting up with your friends saying, I'll see you on Wednesday, 9 o'clock. And if you don't turn up, you'll wait for them.
Absolutely.
And for a certain amount, and then you leave, and that's it. Something's happened, whatever. This day and age, everything is on a device. Everything's going, and you doing the work which you've done through your lifetime, and all the initiatives you keep on doing. Technology keeps on evolving. We know AI is coming. AI is here to a certain level. I personally feel it's not so widely available at the moment, but people are using, whoever are using it. With the coming up generation, even with us, what would you say is, how do you, with all this, the evolution, the changes happening at a very fast pace, what would you say to the people out there, young generation, even the existing one? How do we keep ourselves grounded?
How do you say
I ask you this question because the taxi incidents, I'm certain it's made you feel more
very
humble.
much so. Very much so. It has influenced and affected how I interact with people. Like I said, everybody I deal with now, the delivery chap who brings food, the talabat guy that comes home, I will ask how he is. I will chat to him. I'll wish him a good day, whatever it might be. It might just be 10 words, but it's affected how I interact with people. With the way the world is going, where we're disconnecting, that phenomenal series they had on Netflix recently about adolescence, about how a teenage boy is effectively influenced by what he sees online in his room at night on his own, and that's true of everyone. I think you need to put in place experiences. You need to put in place pulse checks that will take you out of that bubble, whatever bubble you create for yourself. You need to consciously walk out of it.
Okay.
And you need to not just do it one-off. You need to constantly create a process by which you come out of your bubble, whether it's to connect with people, or whether it is to have an experience, or whether it is to expose yourself to knowledge, whatever it might be. But you need to consciously come out of your bubble. Have been as guilty as everyone else of, like I said, I lived in a physical bubble within Jumeirah Bersha, but I also lived in a social and professional bubble, in that everyone I interacted with was me in a different look. They had the same life experiences, they probably had the same education level, they were of the same socioeconomic background, they had the same sort of international exposure, visited the same countries. You and I could probably find more in common than our own compatriots at different socio. So I think if you live in your own bubble and you're familiar with it and you're comfortable with it, you actually start believing that that is a reality. And it's most definitely not a reality. It is your reality. And to appreciate reality, you need to go out of your reality.